Hi, I'm Allison Sepanera.
And I'm Taylor.
And we're the hosts of the Anxiety Chicks podcast, where we dive deep into the reality of anxiety, nutrition, and mental health.
Listen as we explore all things anxiety healing while keeping it real, including our own struggles with mental health.
We'll bring our expertise as healing professionals to the conversation while discussing the tools and strategies you need to heal the anxious mind.
Listen to the Anxiety Chicks on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Anxiety Chicks podcast. I'm Allison Sepanera.
And I'm Taylor. And today on the Anxiety Chicks, we are honored to welcome a true pioneer in the world of neuroscience and mental health, Dr. Caroline Leaf. She's a communication pathologist, clinical neuroscientist, and the author of 19 transformative books that have changed millions of lives. Her latest release, Help in a Hurry, is a powerful guide packed with no-nonsense tools to help you regain peace and clarity when life feels overwhelming. Whether you're battling intrusive thoughts, burnout, or emotional chaos, this episode's for you. Dr. Caroline Leaf, thank you so much for being here. But before we start, for everyone listening, thank you all for also being here. I'm so proud of you for showing up for yourself and your healing today. Things we'll touch on today are mind versus brain, neuroscience basics, what to do when you're overwhelmed, rewriting toxic thoughts, and reframing intrusive thoughts. Now, Dr. Caroline Leaf, thank you so much for being here.
It's so great to be with you.
Before we get into the practical tools that you teach, which we love based on all your work, I've been literally emailing with your podcast assistant for the longest time to get you on here because I'm like, we got to make it work.
Oh, that's amazing.
Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what led you to become so passionate about mental health and writing 19 books changing lives?
Well, thank you for that introduction, and it's really great to be with you both. I'm 61. I've been in this field for 40 years. It's a long time, and I still intend staying in this field for a long time. I've done lots of research, still doing research. As you mentioned, I write books. I do scientific journal articles with my team. I practiced clinically for 25 years. I don't do clinical work, private clinical work anymore, but we do have courses and everything because I can reach a few people one-on-one, but I can reach millions. And my message is to help empower people to understand what the mind is and the difference between the mind and the brain. Because when you understand that and you understand what thoughts are and what memories are, you're empowered to manage the chaos that life throws at us, the ups and downs, and the things that make us anxious, the things that make us feel out of control, and so on. And so that's been, focus of my research. I was also very clinically based, where I worked with people with extreme trauma, any kind of neurological issue, autism, learning disabilities, all that sort of thing as well. And when I was trained back in the 80s, there was such a sort of like almost negative kind of outlook with people that had any kind of brain damage or anything. I work with traumatic brain injury as well. And that really motivated me to get into the research to find tools that would help people not just compromise and sort of just kind of settle, and which is what we were trained to teach our patients to do, almost like teach them to compromise. The brain can't change. That's what they used to say. And that stimulated my research. And I did some of the earliest neuroplasticity research back in the world in 1989, 1990, around that time period, showing that with directed mind input, you can actually change the brain and the body because the mind does the work. The brain and body don't do anything except what the mind tells it to do. So that really got me passionate about, then I just continued with all my studies and things. But growing up in South Africa and seeing what was going on politically and educationally wise there, and there was such a need. So I spent a lot of my time in South Africa working in poorly performing areas, schools, areas that people had nothing, the apartheid era. And I also worked in places like Rwanda, and that really taught me the power of the mind and the power of when you help someone to understand that we can control our reactions, that we can actually rewire our networks, that we can actually, our stories don't change, but we can change what they look like inside of us and therefore how they play out into our future. Things like that. And just seeing the changes in people. I mean, I can tell you 1,000 stories. That really encouraged me to carry on. And that's why I do what I do. Then I decided to put everything in books, courses. We have an app, a new book that's coming out in August, as you mentioned, Help in a Hurry. And that's how I now in the podcast try and help people to realize how amazing they actually are and what to do with all this chaos around us.
Well, I think it's so cool that you've wrote 19 books, and I'm super intrigued by, like, that's a lot of information. So we kind of touched on your book, like you just said. So what inspired this exact book, Help in a Hurry? Like, what is happening in the world or in your own life that you felt this book needs to exist?
So it's interesting because this book started off being something else, which is very often what happens with an author. And we actually had another plan with my publisher, and then that plan hasn't gone. That's my next book. But suddenly I felt like there was a missing link. And a lot of my research has been on habit formation. How long does it actually take to make a change in one's life or build a new habit or change something that's happened in the past, like a trauma or just a pattern that we have developed? And the research, as you know, we hear 21 days, 21 days, and that's not actually accurate science. So I've done a lot of work around the how long does it actually take to change a thought and to change a habit? So thoughts that have been established into patterns, which are habits, and what is a habit really, and all that kind of thing. And in doing that, I showed with myself and my team, plus all the clinical research, that it takes at least 63 days. So at least 3 cycles of 21, not just one cycle. So in each cycle of 21 days does something different, and you have to do all of them to really create sustainable change in our life. Otherwise, it's like you feel like you're just going around and round like a hamster on a wheel, or you feel stuck, or you think, what's wrong with me because I'm just not changing, and I know I need to change, and I can see why I need to change. And it's so frustrating when you get stuck in that kind of cycle. And it's really a journey, and I wanted to understand that journey. And in that process, as I said, I showed that it's 63 days. And if it's big stuff, like if you've had a big trauma like sexual trauma, it may be multiple cycles of 63 days. So I've had some patients who've had extreme traumatic brain injuries, so they've worked for longer periods than 63 days. Or I've had patients that have had extreme trauma from sexual abuse or something, and it's been longer than 63 days, so multiple cycles. Point being is that a minimum amount of time that is required is daily work for around 15 minutes, doing very specific mind, brain, body, or psychoneurobiological steps to make the change. So I say all that to say, in that process, often if someone's in a bad place and you say to them, okay, we're going to work for the next 63 days, or for you to make a change, it's at least 63 days. Someone in a place of high anxiety or going through a lot of stuff or stuck in a pattern, 63 days is a mountain. And so it felt like there was a missing link. So I went back to what was I doing with my patients when I practice, and how do I help people one-on-one, because I do still some client coaching. And what are the kinds of answers I give to people at the book table and that sort of thing. And I would always say to them, let's start with the moment. The 63 seconds is key. The first 63 seconds, if you can learn to manage that, you can change your psychoneurobiology, your mind, brain, body network quite significantly, which will open your mind to the patterns in your life. It'll also calm you down enough to start releasing peace, which is fuel, and also activates wisdom. So in that state, which is a regulated state, basically I'm describing self-regulation. If you can learn to self-regulate 63 seconds, and then your mind changes and it becomes opened, you can then look at those patterns that require 63 days to change in a much, much easier way. So I found that when I worked in that moment, which is what I was doing with my patients, I was helping them in the moment, and then that was easy for them to move into the long term. So I thought, this is like a missing link that I haven't written enough about. And I've spoken about it, but I hadn't written about it. So we did some surveys as well, and from all the clinical research and application and surveys, and I stress that because my stuff is very scientific. I don't teach anything that hasn't got a scientific foundation, which I think is very important, as well as clinical application. And so we did surveys finding out what are the top areas currently in this day and age, the information age, the AI age, the age where we can get information so quickly, where there's also a lot of hyper focus on productivity and hustle culture and happiness, positive psychology, and if you're not happy all the time, what's wrong with you? And the biomedical model telling us we've got brain diseases and mental diseases when we actually don't. We're just dealing with the stories of our life. All this mix has really thrown people off, which is why your podcast, Anxiety Chicks, and the title of your podcast is very relevant to today and to what I'm writing about in this book. So I thought, okay, we need something that's an entry point for people, and that's what this book is. It's an entry point for how do I deal with these issues in the moment. And so we found that there were about 25 different ones, and then when we analyzed it, there's like a top 16 areas, which included things like people saying, help, I'm always under pressure. I'm under so much pressure, or I'm so stressed out, or help, I'm angry all the time, or help, I'm just always tired, or help, I want to punch that person in the face, or, things, and I'm stuck in regret. I'm stuck in people pleasing. So those are just some of them. Black and white thinking. I mean, that's actually quite a big one, where people think, well, it's this or that. Meanwhile, there's no black and white. It's all grayscale anyway. And things like that. And so I took that and then made it really simple chapters, simple content. What is, for example, people pleasing? Why do we people please? And then how do we break that cycle in the moment? So how can I work in the 63-second sort of zone? So all the exercises or techniques in here that, as I stress, are scientific. Chapters are short, simple, as you would have seen. I think you've looked at the PDF we sent you. The techniques are all, they're not hard to do. They don't take long, but you can't be in a moment where you want to punch someone in the face and think, okay, hold on, before I punch you in the face, let me go find the technique. You need to be, I'm being facetious, but we need to be proactive. If we're going to self-regulate, we need to recognize that life is just overwhelming. Pretty much everyone's feeling very burnt out and very overwhelmed. And just because we can get access to so much, we don't reset properly and that sort of thing. We don't get into that space. And we can talk about the science of why and whatever in a moment. So this book helps us to then reset. So I'm just being triggered by that person in that meeting who got so angry, and they always get angry and they trigger me and I get angry. We end up arguing and the meetings just go down the drain. Or that relationship issue, there's a child or a sister or a sibling or an aunt or whatever who just has this attitude, and they have this tone, and when that tone is, that tone, and you suddenly there's this explosion happening and big emotions flying everywhere and wrong things said, or you find yourself people pleasing again. Someone said, can you do this? And you say yes. You think, damn, why did I do that? And you get so frustrated. Those moments, how do you stop those moments? The intrusive thoughts, those things that just seem to catch you and trip you up. And all of those things, when you don't regulate them, they just crash you. They just create chaos, overwhelm, burnout, and people then, think that they've got an anxiety disorder or a disease or something wrong with their brain. And that's not what's going on here. And so this book addresses that point.
Well, I was so excited to just respond to this, because this is like I was like, oh my gosh, yes. I want to say yes to everything you were saying, because this is literally so my bread and butter. Like the way that you just describe how important it is to take action and to use really practical tools and techniques and action steps when you're learning how to self-regulate and learning how to rewire your brain and learning what thought patterns are really from conditioning for a lot of years of your life. And it just resonated so much, not only with the work that I do with my clients too as a cognitive therapist, but just in my own life. I mean, I remember starting my journey with my journey with healing was only about 15 years ago. But now looking back to my journey of having anxiety since I was a child, trying to really figure out what healing looked like for me and what was actually going on in my brain that I wasn't able to really have access to until I worked with someone like you or worked with my own therapist. And they gave me the insight that I needed about my experiences that were so different from other people's experiences. So I'd love some feedback from you about maybe some specific cases or specific examples. You talk about these first 63 seconds of making a change, right? And creating a different habit. I would love to hear some like real life examples, if you have them, of what you would normally do with a certain person or
myself.
Yeah, because everyone struggles with so many different things. It's like, well, what would I use versus this person? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is a great question, and thank you for sharing that. There's so many different concepts in the book that you can play around with. And I'm going to answer that directly now, but just for people to understand, you don't have to study every single thing in. You go through and look at the contents page and say, oh yeah, that's me. I get stuck in regret or whatever. And then look through and see what techniques they work for you. Understand what it is, understand what's going on and how you can start building up. And these little charts you can download to work out your patterns, which is really important because I'm not asking you to fix your pattern in 63 seconds. You can't. You fix patterns in 63 days minimum, but you can arrest the slide into chaos in 63 seconds. So that's a good place to potentially start start, and then I can give you a real life example if that's okay with you, is why am I saying 63 seconds? It's so specific. I'm playing a little bit with numbers here. We found 63 days for a habit formation. So, and we know that from the research that 60 seconds is more or less the time frame that we are stream of consciousness, which is we've got different levels of mind, and we can talk about that as well. But we have a stream of consciousness that we are aware of. Our conscious mind lags behind our non-conscious. The non-conscious is the part of our mind that's the biggest, fastest, most intelligent, full of wisdom, not bound by time and space. Every memory you've ever had clustered into thoughts is there. It's on your side. It's finding all the disruptive thoughts, all the good thoughts, making you aware of them, etc., etc. So that's happening fast and quick at 400 billion actions plus per second, and there's all this action going on. Consciously, you're not aware of all of that. Our brains would literally explode, and our bodies, we couldn't handle it. So it's filtered through. This fast action is filtered through to the subconscious. The subconscious is a level between the non-NON, not unconscious. That's a brain state. There's brain states, conscious and when you're awake and when you're asleep, and then there's mind levels. And the mind level, there's the biggest one, non-conscious, then there's the middle one, subconscious, and then there's the conscious, which we all hear about a lot. So the subconscious is like a waiting room. It takes all the speedy, fast stuff from the non-conscious, and the non-conscious selects out the most disruptive things that are disrupting our life, causing anxiety, whatever, and the things that are good, because you want to focus on the good stuff too to build resilience, puts them in the subconscious, and then the subconscious gets the conscious mind's attention through various signals, and those signals are the things we're all familiar with, our emotions, how that feels in our body, how that affects our behaviors, and how that affects our perspectives. So this is kind of a cycle that's going on all day long. When we talk about the 63 seconds, think of a cartoon. So like whatever Disney cartoon. Now we see that there's lots of movement, the characters, but each movement is like 140 characters or something like that. Like they have to draw X amount for every few seconds of movement. That's sort of what's happening here, is that your stream of consciousness is that it goes from millions down to sort of thousands, down to just certain amounts of burst every 40 seconds, but we can't process that. And then it gets to the point consciously. It's all happening. Subconscious and non-conscious can process any level, but our conscious can only really process every 10 seconds with focus. So we're aware of something going on all the time, but when we actually, it's around about every 10 seconds. And then more or less every 10 seconds put together, 6 of those is 60 seconds. So every 60 seconds is when we really get a level of good self-regulation going. So what and I know that's kind of complicated, so just think about the 60 seconds based on 6 10-second blocks as a sort of stream of consciousness. So it doesn't mean that you can only focus at 60 seconds. It just means that your best way of starting to control your reactions happens around the 60-second mark. So what you do in that 60 seconds is very, very important in terms of directing how you function. And so that's what these exercises or the little techniques inside the book that I've explained inside Help in a Hurry do. They're based on what can I do in the 60 seconds? And then once you start that, they can go on longer. You can do them for up to 10, 20 minutes. There's no, limits. They shouldn't, but in the moment, what do I need now? So you use them kind of on 2 levels. Find your favorite way of whatever, and you may find, okay, this is what I can do in the moment of anger when that person at work's driving me nuts, or that I want to punch that person in the face or something, or I'm stuck in regret or whatever it may be. And then that opens the door to the pattern. So then I can identify the patterns. So there's little charts and things you can download. And then I can decide, okay, this is a pattern. This is happening on a regular basis. There's a who, what, when, where, why, how analysis going on. I do it this often. It's stimulated by this kind of situation. It's happening all the time. If I leave those are the things those are the habits that are driving me. So those are the things that I need to then put into a 63-day cycle that I call it. And the system is the neurocycle, where you do a formula daily to rewire the network. Okay, so based on all of that, I now am let's create the scenario. So now I'm in that meeting. So let's say that you're at work and there's a team that you work with all the time, and there's one person in that team that just their tone, their body language, and their way that they respond is just so curt or whatever, and it just gets you. And they seem to always like jump on what you say. And I'm making something up, okay? But probably a lot of people can relate to this because it's quite a common scenario, and I often get asked this scenario. So Now you get in that meeting and it happens again. And what generally would happen is you get worked up, you feel it in your body, you feel it in your emotions, and your mind's going, oh my gosh, they're doing it again. And your facial expressions change, and out comes that curt response or that fiery response. And before you know it, there's a little mini explosion happening, or there's retreat, and the problem didn't get solved. The meeting didn't go the way it was supposed to go. Other people are uncomfortable. You know the picture. I painted the picture. I think you get that. So that's now a reactive moment. That is not going to lead to wisdom. The minute you're in that state, you step completely out of wisdom. You stepped into just what I call the conscious toddler mind. Think of a toddler. They are all over the place. They are excited. They're up one minute, down the next. And that's what they're supposed to be. That's how they learn. Your conscious mind's a lot like a toddler. It thinks, feels, and chooses. It's only awake when you're awake. It's pretty slow. It can handle one conversation at a time. I mean, we're having one conversation, but if all three of us were talking at once, no one would know what was going on, because the conscious mind, the non-conscious, can handle infinite number of conversations. But the conscious mind, it's one conversation at a time. So therefore, that conversation coming up at you in the scenario is this person generating the statement that's worked you up, and that's activated the last 6 weeks of meetings where something similar has happened, and that network is activated in the mind body network.
Can I ask you just a quick question about that?
Of course.
You know how people, a lot of people talk about, quote unquote, the reactive mind. Do you think that the part of the reactive mind is in our conscious mind or our subconscious mind?
Very good question. So definitely, so your conscious mind, which is awake when you're awake, can only handle 2 to 3 words per second.
Okay.
And which translates into about one conversation. And I can get to all the numbers, but we don't need to talk about all the numbers. Just think of like one conversation at a time.
Yeah.
And it's got like almost like two sides of a coin. The one side is this toddler mind, this kind of messy part. And one of my books, I talk about cleaning up the mental mess. And you need that. It's a good part. It's the toddler learning, unexpected, up and down. It's how we gather data. It's how we start processing and making sense of data. So you have to have that part. But think of a toddler that's not guided by a parent. They'll be doing something crazy in seconds. So the parent guides. No, you don't stand up in your chair. You're going to fall over. No, don't touch the hot stove. That kind of thing. So when that's the other side of the coin. So the conscious mind has this learning side, this toddler side, and a parent side. When we go into the 63-second moment, we activate that beautiful balance. And as soon as that balance is activated, you open your mind to your non-conscious, which is your wisdom, which is your spiritual level, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Scientifically, it's the non-conscious. A lot of people will talk about that as the spiritual level. When people talk about the soul and the consciousness, they're talking about conscious mind generally. So just to get people oriented with what I'm talking about. But we have this wisdom that drives us. We have all the tools to survive. It's in there. This is why we have intuition, insight, thinking things through, taking time to think deeply. All the words we use is because we're tapping into what is there. It's, you've got to fight. You're not fight. You've got to do work to get there. It's not just going to pop out. Now, to go to your question there, when I get stuck in the toddler mind, I'm going to get hurt. I'm going to get stuck in this cycle that's not growth. It's just, and that will create abnormal anxiety. Well, I hate to say the word abnormal, anxiety that's out of control, because anxiety is actually a great emotion. It's fabulous. It tells you data. It gives you data and it's telling you something. But if you don't listen to the message, it gets stuck in the toddler mind and it makes you feel out of control and becomes toxic. Yeah. But if you listen to the parent, and the parent then accesses the wisdom, because think of a parent. I mean, I'm a parent of 4. They're all adults. I've got 2 grandchildren, but we come in and guide our toddler, but we also look, what are courses I can do to be a better grandparent or a better mother? Or, you read books, you talk to friends, you get wisdom from, that's the wise mind. So we always want to be operating in activating the toddler with the parent, with the wisdom. And that happens when we take time. The 63 seconds opens that doorway. And as we do the 63 days, we then train ourselves. And then that's basically mind management or self-regulation. So coming back to the example, I can, in that 63 seconds, I'm either, if I stay mad and just send out that, respond with some sarcastic comment or get worked up and get as worked up as that person, I'm in the toddler mind. I'm not accessing the parent mind, and then I'm not accessing wisdom. And that there's no wisdom in that scenario. just a lot of worked up people. Whereas if I stop and think, okay, that person, and I can do this in 63 seconds, I can stop and I can recognize, I can stand back immediately into the parent mind that says, hey, let's just look at this situation. What they are saying is irritating. So first thing, the parent acknowledges what the toddler is experiencing. So in simple language, always honor, not elevate, honor the fact that you are responding in that way. We mustn't decry our responses. They made me mad. I feel frustrated. They've hurt me. They're saying something that I've already explained. Why are they making me feel, whatever it is? I don't know. I'm just making up stuff. So it's very important that you acknowledge that and be aware. Like, you could hear my tone changed. You could, my shoulders lifted, whatever. So what is that emotion it's generating? What's the body signal? What's the perspective? They're always doing this. And that's going through your head, but it's coming through because we generate electromagnetic energy from that thought pattern.
It's really like validating ourselves, right?
It's validating. Totally validating. Because if you invalidate, you basically make it worse. You don't deconstruct and reconstruct. You simply grow. So whatever's not validated becomes something that is just going to grow and become worse. But validation says, okay, it's okay. This is not who you are. This is happening because of, and then you do a bit of a mind shift where you say, okay, well, I don't have time to resolve this now, but I can get the data from this. There could be something in this. Maybe there's something that I'm saying that's triggering this, or maybe there isn't, but either way, they're having a bad, whatever. I get a little bit of self-talk in there. And then what's really important is how you breathe. Now, just think, when you're angry, the first thing that people tend to do is a short, angry breath.
Yeah.
And our instinct is to get oxygen in, because oxygen is how we calm down our neurophysiology, our brain and body. Oxygen calms down chemicals, it calms down hormones, etc., which are chemicals and so on, heartbeats and whatever, all the different things, brain waves and all kinds of stuff. But if I do in anger and react in anger, I don't calm down, I make it worse. I create a hurricane. So the way I breathe has got to be attached to a mindset that is the correct mindset. So the 63 seconds enables us to create the gap in a traffic light. It's the red and the orange before you go green, so you don't jump the traffic light. So you're creating the gap, you're creating the pause, and in that pause, I can then do the validation, the acknowledgement, whatever you want to call it. I can do a little bit of a mind shift, and I can just focus on how I'm actually breathing. But because I've done the first two steps, that's energy. It's not anything woo-woo. It's electromagnetic energy in little packets, like a little cloud of raindrops. And then when I breathe, because I'm breathing while this is going on, but because I'm doing it, I breathe differently. And because what's going on in my head, that's being breathed in. I'm not breathing in a chaotic rain cloud. I'm breathing in a beautiful pink fluffy cloud. I'm just giving analogies. But that controls it. Then you can take it even further. You can then do some kind of guided breathing. And the sort of thing for anger that I would recommend is a SIP breathing, SIP breathing, where you take a very deep breath. And then when you can't take any more, you take a bit more. And that creates immediately this sensation of being high. And that basically what it's doing is it's pumping oxygen to the frontal lobe. And that then helps to calm down that burst of oxygen, carrying the correct mindset, the correct energy wave. If I've calm myself down, it's a correct energy wave. If I haven't and I'm still in anger, this is what's on top of the oxygen molecule, if you can picture that. So this, and I'm saying a lot, but this 63 seconds is doing an enormous amount to create the gap. As soon as you've done that, you step back into parent mind, you've opened the door to wisdom, and you won't maybe find the solution immediately, but you won't be reactive. You will respond. And that response could be, okay, let's all cool down. Or it could be you keep your tone of voice and your facial expression calm, because that 50% of communication is body language and tone. And that works people up like nothing else, is that tone, that body movement. So if you can keep calm, you generate peace. Peace is fuel. It generates a very calming brainwave from you to the other person. It's all kinds of stuff happen. There's so much. I can talk for hours, just what happens in that 60 seconds. And it's powerful. So that's an example. I can give you a personal example after you, if you want to ask me questions first.
This is all like, I wish we could have you on for like 10 hours straight, but we can't. So you've mentioned before, kind of like we were talking about, we wanted, the mind and the brain are very different. And first of all, you are so smart. So I feel like we need to like take this back to the basics for everybody listening.
Yeah.
So when you say the mind and the brain they're not the same thing. So does that mean we can train ourselves
Absolutely.
Our mind can change our brain to get out of these anxiety spirals.
Absolutely. So your brain is simply a very complicated 3 pound thing of flesh. Literally, I have a little model of a brain. For those of you that are listening, I'm holding up a model of the brain. You are not your brain. This is so important to understand. And nor is your mind your brain. Our current sort of language that's used, that, and it's been about 50 years now, is that the mind is the brain and the brain generates thoughts. And that's only one body of science. It's actually not accurate at all. And if you really look at the scientific studies, you'll see that the mind is actually driving those experiments. So they, for example, will get someone to think of a sad thought, and then they'll see a part of the brain lighting up depending on what technology they're using, or a brainwave or whatever. And then they say, oh, that part of the brain produced that thought. It's all back to front, because the person did what first? They first had an instruction from someone else's mind. They thought about the instruction and they gave it to that person. That person received the auditory sound waves, processed that in their mind, and then responded. And then the brain responded. So there's a sequence that happens here. Mind happened first and then the brain responded. So the mind is the generator. The mind is 99% of who you are. The brain and the body are around 1% of who you are. And they are, your mind is the thing that animates, or it's your life force, literally, because it's your mind that makes the brain and body work. So the brain and body respond. So if your mind is all over the place, it's in through this energy that's like really toxic, and that batters the brain and the body. And over time, the network that is being wired in is a very abnormal network. I'll give you another example. So here's a little tree, and when the mind energy, which is like it's electromagnetic energy, the stuff that makes this riverside work, okay, the stuff that makes your phone work. Electromagnetic energy is one of the it's a whole spectrum, and our mind encompasses that whole spectrum. We can see each other because light is part of the electromagnetic spectrum, and it's the only part of the electromagnetic spectrum that is visible. But there's a whole bunch of energy in the spectrum, and it radiates, and that's pretty much what your mind is. Each of us has our own unique radiating spectrum, and it's kind of in a circle around you. I know you can't see my hands because there's 3 of us here, but if you just put your hands out and draw a circle around you, that's kind of like a biofield. So all of us have our mind. If you want to know where your mind is, it is in this field and through your brain and your body. When someone dies, within 10 to 20 seconds of the heart stopping, the brain flatlines and everything starts disintegrating. And that's because when you die, the life force has gone out. We are no longer talking. We're just a blob of flesh that's doing nothing. It's gone cold. And so that life force, your mind is this life force that enables you to think and feel and choose and love and be intelligent and have a perception and be different. And so it's all your psychology, but it also runs your physiology. So if your heart's beating right at this moment, obviously you're alive. That's because your mind is running it. Your mind's running your brain waves. Your mind's running your hormones. Your mind's helping you breathe. So your mind keeps the body doing what it needs to do. So if my mind is toxic, so now I'm holding up a toxic looking thought tree, and I call these thought trees because this is kind of what thoughts look like in the brain. They look like trees in the brain. They look like little garden hedges in the cells of our body. This is why we do somatic work, because memory is not in the brain alone. The brain is not the boss. We all get told the brain is the boss. The brain holds a type of an angle of the memory, but your body also holds the memory. We all know that. But it's literally little networks that form in your body. And then there's a third place in the mind. In this mind zone, we have this cloud, imagine a rain cloud, which is all the details of what I'm saying as a little electromagnetic waves that group together. So this conversation would be one wave, and your next podcast you interview would be another one, and your experience when you go home tonight is another one. So, and all day long we're building these experiences in our mind. So in summary, mind first. As people are listening to us now, it first goes in the mind. The non-conscious gets it first and does all this processing and whatever, and then it trickles it through to the conscious mind. So that by the time you're consciously aware of what I'm saying, there's been a whole ton of stuff going on in the background that you're not even aware of at 400 billion actions per second. And that's all mind. While the mind is processing what I'm saying, it's also driving your ability to breathe, make 800,000 to 1 million cells every second. I mean, all this amazing stuff that's going on without you even being aware. Now you're aware of what I'm saying. So now as soon as you're aware, you're going to think about what I'm saying. You're going to feel there's feeling and processing happening, and then there's choices that are made, and those choices tend to happen around every 7 to 10 seconds. That's those numbers I was talking about earlier. So we make these little mini choices that build up to a choice, that kind of like a biggish choice around every 60 seconds. And so your mind doing all of this. So your mind does all of this stuff, and then it takes what it's chosen. Now it's made a little cloud, and it puts it into the brain. And then the brain, as soon as that energy cloud hits the brain, you get a reaction. And the electrical chemical reaction, proteins are made, they grow together, and you grow little trees. If it's unhealthy, it'll be an unhealthy looking little tree, which is protein networks, the networks we talk about, rewiring networks. This is what we're talking about. If it's healthy, it's a healthy looking tree. You'll also immediately build the hedges in the body, in every cell of the body. Have 37 to 100 trillion cells. So we make 37 to 100 trillion versions of what you're hearing me say. I mean, this is mind-blowing stuff, and everything is connected. Now you control all of that. On a non-conscious level, that whole process is being driven by your wisdom. That's how brilliant we are. Consciously, our job is to think, feel, and choose about the moment. And to make sure that our thinking, feeling, and choosing about the moment is guided by the parent, which then opens the door to this phenomenal wisdom that we have inside of us. So that's why it's so important to get in that zone of the 63 seconds. So the mind-brain difference is the brain and body simply are hosts to this incredible mind with all these different levels. If I if I just stick in the toddler mind, I send a lot of very negative rain clouds, big stormy rain clouds into the brain. And I build these networks that are basically misfolded proteins, inflammation, chemicals that are unbalanced, that then is same in the body. And then over time, cumulatively, we weaken the brain and the body. So there's an impact on the brain and the body. It's the result of our thinking. It's not the cause. Over time, over years, that builds up, and we can land up with things like Alzheimer's, all the dementias that we talk about, Parkinson's, these things. With Parkinson's is showing that there's a lot of negative impact in the gut, and that links to the substantia nigra, which is a part in the brain that controls movement. I mean, we're seeing now that the sources are not actually in the brain unless you've had an actual head injury. And even then, you've still got the wisdom of your body. You've still got the wisdom of your mind. I had patients that were written off as literally as vegetables. That's what the doctors used to say. Terrible, terrible thing to say about a patient, but they did. And I've had them go from being a vegetable to going back and getting a degree and going on to be top criminal lawyers, and not just once, multiple times. So I know I have seen people that have gone through the worst of the worst Rwandan genocides, and when you give this kind of knowledge to people, what they do with it is unbelievable.
I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so I feel like you're hitting a lot of points that are so important, because I feel like a lot of people, especially who struggle with anxiety or any type of anxiety disorder, they're always like, I just started feeling anxious. I just started feeling symptoms for no absolute reason. Like nothing happened, and it just, but like, like they always say that. So
Always.
what you're saying is when people are at that point, there is so much they're missing that was happening before that. And it's how can we get a hold of that? And you're saying we can rewire those things. So
Absolutely.
If somebody's sitting here listening to this and they're like, Dr. Leaf, I am such an anxious person. I feel like I will want to enjoy something. I feel like I go into it with a really positive mindset, and I'm trying my best to wake up and be like, today's going to be a great day. And then boom, anxiety hits. And I just can't seem to get out of that spiral. What do I do?
So the first thing is, it's what you said there is very, very good. You summed that up beautifully, that the fact that anxiety feels like it's just hit me out of the blue. You totally correctly said there's a whole lot going on. So by the time we feel it, there's a whole lot that's been going on generally over time. And the feeling of it being consistent or chronic, that it's ongoing, is because we've never really dealt with the signals that were coming through over time. And that's not to put blame on anyone. We are not being educated in this. That's why I do what I do. We're told in this current day and age, we've gone backward. When it comes to mental health, we've gone backwards in the last 40 years, not forwards. Because what's happened is that long, deep discussions, Jung and Freud, and let's psychoanalyze. And I know there are still psychoanalysts out there. They do phenomenal work because they're helping you to go back and find. You said you're a cognitive therapist. You go back and you look for. There's always a source. If you're anxious, you're not anxiety. You are anxious because of. That's key. Because of. So that anxiety that hits you in the morning when you wake up, or the middle of the night, or in your car, or in the shower, or in the middle of nowhere, it's now become such a thing in your face because it's been accumulating over time. It's not the end of the world. The awareness now is that, okay, if you know that this is not who I am, it's really key to tell yourself that this is happening because of. Let me now begin a search for the because of. But what you probably need in that moment is something to, regulate yourself. And you want to step into some serious self-regulation. And that's where the 63 seconds comes in. And you may need longer. You may need multiple 63 seconds. I'm not saying that everyone's going to control a panic attack in 63 seconds, but you're going to do maybe 63 seconds, so 3 minutes. So I have an app called the Neurocycle app where I walk you through the 63 days, but I also have little exercises that if you're in a panic attack, and the panic attacker one is walks you through, takes about 10 minutes to, play the thing through. So there's 10 times 6, that's 60, it's 10 of the 63 seconds. So you just do what you need to do, but to have the awareness that this is coming from a whole lot of because ofs, and what I need to do is get myself in this moment into a point where I can function to do whatever it is that you have to do, whether it's getting kids to school or getting to work or just getting out of bed or driving your car to the next meeting or getting through the shopping line or whatever it is, or sitting in this meeting without falling apart, whatever it is. That's where to know that if I can just self-regulate myself in the 63 seconds, you may have to, in your mind, be smiling sweetly, but in your mind, you're running through a series of exercises. And you can train yourself to do this. And in doing that, you calm yourself in that moment. You then direct how the network is going to carry this new information in that triggered that feeling of anxiety. It's going to, as you do that, it's going to start pulling up the source. And then you need to commit to sitting down and actually spending a 63-day time period and maybe more on going through what I call the neurocycle to rewire. And so, yes, absolutely, yes, we can direct neuroplasticity. Your neuroplasticity, quite simply, is your mind changes your brain and your body, not just your brain. We've been told the definition of neuroplasticity, or if you read it in the general media, it'll be your brain can change itself. Your brain can do nothing. Your amygdala does nothing. Your prefrontal cortex does nothing except what the mind tells it to do. So if you are panicking, your executive function drops. It's not your prefrontal cortex doing that. Your prefrontal cortex is designed to be activated when you're in executive type functions, decision making and wisdom and that kind of stuff. So when you're doing those things, your prefrontal cortex is very activated. So when you're in chaos and you find yourself mind first, feeling out of control, then the response will be a lowering of oxygen, energy, blood flow, and brain waves will get high beta brain waves in the frontal cortex. It's not the frontal cortex causing the problem. It's the impact on the frontal cortex. So that's the result. It starts in the mind and the result is in the brain. Now, this is really great news because we live through our nervous system. Okay. And the nervous system runs every part of our body. But that nervous system, that vagus nerve, and all the things we hear so much about the vagus nerve, but all the different nerves that activate the different systems and so on, that carry the impulses. You also have the quantum level, which is, it's not just that you don't have energy just running along nerves. You also have energy that's actually flowing between the nerves and inside the nerves. All of that can become chaotic. And so when we have that mass of energy hitting us that's chaotic, it's like being in the midst of a hurricane. That hurricane isn't, or a tornado, in the eye of the tornado. That tornado is not going to go on forever, but it feels like everything. Because in that moment, you're in the eye of the tornado, you're in the midst of that hurricane. It feels like this is everything. So the 1% becomes 100%. And then we are led to believe by the current biomedical model that, wow, I'm having a lot of these hurricanes. So there's something wrong with my brain. And now I've got a disease. Now I have another network activated that I've read about. If you have this symptom, then you've got this you've got a disease of anxiety, like cancer. This is what 95% of people think, that depression is a chemical imbalance. There's no science behind that. It's completely disproved. It never was proved in the first place. But that's the general, most doctors think that's still the case, because GPs primary care physicians do a 3-week round in med school. I train physicians all the time. So it's not their fault either. They have wrong training. And so essentially, in a nutshell, we feel like the 1% is 100%. So we need to teach people, which is what you're doing with your work, what you're doing with this podcast, what I'm trying to do, is to tell people to realize, yes, my body is telling me something, my brain is telling me something, but it's not actually intelligent stuff that's coming out my body. It's a pure response. So what I need to do is calm down that response in order to actually tune into the parent mind and the wise mind. And when I do that, I can get to the source. Now, when I get to the root or the source of my anxiety, which could be multiple things, multiple of these toxic trees that have just built up over the years and got connected at the root system, I'm not going to resolve that in 1 minute or 5 minutes either. It's going to take me time. I'm going to have to do the work. It's hard, etc., etc. But you can rewire it, because your mind is always changing your brain. Every moment of the day, your mind is changing your brain and your body. Either you directing that change, either you directing the neuroplasticity, which is mind management, or it's happening chaotically and you're letting the things of the world chaotically hit you and you're just submitting to that 100% body reaction and thinking this is it, when it's not that. That's just 1%. It feels like what? It feels huge. So when you calm that down, which is what yoga and breathing and somatic body work and all those things and meditation, what they'll do is they'll calm you down, activate peace, which is fuel, get you into the parent mind, get you balanced with a toddler, get you into the wisdom, and now you can think a little more clearly, and then you can handle the next minute. Does that make sense?
So are you saying then that even when we feel out of control, we actually have the choice to be in control?
And that's a hard one for people to even process, because when you feel out
Right?
of control, you feel like you don't have any choice. But choice we
Right.
always have. Now, let's talk about someone who's in a very strong addiction cycle, who's so depressed they can't get out of bed, which happens. Now, that's where things have got very extreme. And that's why we need therapy, and why we need support, and why we need loved ones, and why we
Yeah.
need to know how to have a tool in our toolbox. That
Yeah.
I can't phone my therapist at 3 a.m. when I'm feeling like I'm going to die from a panic attack. I
Yep.
need to know what I can do in that moment. So if you've got something that you can do in that 63 seconds, it'll give you your ability to choose back. And your choice might be something so small. It might just be, I'm actually just going to watch my favorite TV show for the rest of the night. And that's totally okay. I'm going to watch whatever, Downton Abbey or Grey's Anatomy. I don't know, whatever show you can see what I like watching. Or 911 or something. I don't know. Those are the things I like watching. But watch or pick up a fiction book. Even better, have a fiction book on hand. Fiction is one of the most amazing ways of you getting to know yourself, realizing you've got the choice is always accessible, and getting you out of yourself a little bit into creative imagination. You identify with characters, you get sucked up into stories, because we are just naturally drawn to stories as humans. Great way of calming yourself down. And then you don't have to, otherwise we sit there thinking through that same thing on that hamster wheel over and over again. But reading fiction or watching a bit of TV, or, reading something on your phone. This whole thing, you can't use your phone in bed. Go listen to some of my podcasts. Read some of the research. Some of us, it will make us stay awake, but most people, it actually doesn't. You have to find your happy medium. What keeps us awake is not the cell phone. What keeps us awake is the anxiety that's unmanaged. It's the mind stuff.
Yeah.
So you've got to get yourself into that space. Get the 63 seconds, do something fun. And then tomorrow when you wake up, do the work. Fix up and do whatever. And there's many different ways.
What I love most about everything you've said today is the 63 seconds. So helping somebody, because a lot of people, they're like, I'm having a panic attack. I need help right now. And you provide that help, but also you provide the game plan, because a lot of people just want to do the work when they feel anxious.
Exactly.
And we have to put in the work when we're not anxious to help us not be anxious. It's
totally. Otherwise, it's a Band-Aid. Yeah, it was just a Band-Aid.
right. So thank you so much for coming on here.
My pleasure. Gosh, it's gone so quickly.
I know, it went so fast. I could literally have you on so many, like every week. But before you go, if somebody wants more information from you, wants to hear more from you, I know you said there's podcasts. Give us all that real quick.
Thank you. Dr. Leaf shows where they can hear me every week. And obviously social media, I'm on every platform, including Blue Sky, LinkedIn, the whole lot. And it's Dr. Caroline Leaf. You can find me there. Our webpage is drleaf.com. The new book's available August 5th, and it's helpinahurrybook.com. And there's a whole lot of pre-order bonuses like we always offer as authors. And I think that's everything. Social media, podcast, I'm in all the usual places, and the books are available wherever books are sold.
Awesome. And we'll put all that in the show notes. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you.
I learned a lot personally, and I feel motivated just even listening to you. So
Oh, that's so nice.
I know everybody listening is very grateful.
Yeah, I love, oh my gosh, like my bread and butter. I can't wait to talk to you offline more. It's going to be great.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And you asked great questions, and you really generated a lot of really beautiful, healthy, positive energy. So it drew me in. So it was really easy to talk to you both. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye, guys.
you. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
We hope this episode reminded you that you're not alone and healing is always possible.
If something we shared helped you, the best way to support the show is to leave a review or share this episode with a friend who needs it.
And make sure you're following us on Instagram at The Anxiety Chicks for more support between episodes.
We're just two chicks on our own healing journeys, cheering you on every step of the way.
Until next time.
Take a deep breath. You've got this.